welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. Little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP and you're going to get 10% off your order. With that code FNP at simbody.com, you're really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks ? Kicks.
Just like that, we're back. We're live in person, in color. Matt, it has been a time or two since we've been together for Fight Night Picks ? Kicks. As always, one half your hosting duo, Craig Allen. Twitter and Instagram, Craig Allen FNP. You can find the new thumbnail. Listen, I didn't even debut it in the video before this show. I figured, hey, you're going to have to, little bit of a scavenger hunt, little bit of an Easter egg hunt before Halloween. Those things don't go together.
They don't.
But Matt, they can find you as well at Matt Allen FNP. You know that we've got Prince Vegeta's son, Bub Collins. We got Todd, Fluffy Stuff HD. I don't want to know what that's about. Jesse Engel. Jake is hanging out. Jason's here as well. Jack the Ripper, Yikes, and from Orlando as well. Saying Kick Bros are the real goats. Well, I appreciate that. And listen, the salmon is all about it.
I think we do have to address just how good Bo Nickel looked on Tuesday Night Contenders, though. Like, wow.
I don't think you have to when you look at the opening line against poor Jamie Pickett.
That's true. He has been respected by the odds makers, but that's the thing about Bo Nickel. It might be a stretch right now, and maybe I'm looking at it through rose-colored glasses because he is the new kind of thing right now in the UFC, but Bo Nickel might become the best fighter to ever come off of that show. Like, that might be a bit of hyperbole early on, but still, he has looked amazing in his two first appearances, and that's the thing. If he can beat a guy like Jamie Pickett in his UFC debut, that just gets you closer to some of those big names that much faster. So, Bo Nickel, the sky really might be the limit for him.
Mr. Guy's not about it, but what I do know is he looked pretty damn good against a poor wrestler on Contender Series. Jamie Pickett, not the best wrestler. Offensively, yes. Defensively, no. And I mean, he looked terrible against Dennis Tululin.
But they are doing the right thing with Nickel, though. They're building him up slowly but surely. Everybody knows what his potential can be. So why ruin the hype train just yet? Give him a few more good wins. Let him work on the stand-up. Let him work on the jiu-jitsu. I just think his skill set right now for being so new to the sport is so high level that I'm really excited to see just what we do end up getting from his career.
So, Matt, the people might have seen as like a trailer when you clicked on this video before you actually watched it. Fight Night Picks Parry Encounter. Next weekend? How many fights are there, Matt, with the UFC?
None.
There's none. So if you want to get those in, Parry Encounter in the comments section. Don't do it in the chat because it's kind of hard to go back into the live chat and find your topics for those videos, but make sure you come back in, hit up that comment section below the video, and we'll get moving. Now, Matt, is this one of the biggest UFC cards we've ever seen?
No, but I will say this. There's a decent amount of fights on this card that I do care about, and I think that does matter, you know? Like, there might be some cards where the better fights, they might reach higher highs, if you will, but there's probably going to be less fights in total that I end up caring about on a card in totality. I've seen a lot of people in the chat mention Sadiq Youssef fight. Like, that's a pretty big fight. That's a guy who was promised a really big opportunity his last time out. Now he's fighting a very dangerous fighter making their UFC debut, so I'm really excited for Youssef to be making his fight, or to be in that fight. I'm excited for Brendan Allen, Krzysztof Jotko as well. I just think there's a good level of fights on this card.
And I see Louis Bond saying shame that Garbrandt versus Yaya got canceled. I mean, Yaya, all about it. He's been in the UFC since a dawn of time.
Did you ever think he would fight Cody Garbrandt? Just ever? That their careers would somehow cross?
I would have been all about it. Ryan W. saying quick hits for Bellator. I got nothing, pal. I mean, I'm excited about the Spike Carlisle fight against AJ McKee, but I'm not making any picks on that one.
I saw one picture of AJ weighing in. Looked good. That's about it.
Nelly saying, did you guys catch one championship last night? Not a chance. No dice. I mean, I like one, but you get me on DJ Moraes, you lose me when you got Muay Thai and grappling. A lot of people like it. I don't necessarily like it. Donald E. Guys hitting up a giant super chat saying, Donald E. Guys, maybe this will convince Craig not to pick against the Queen. Who's the Queen? Like the royalty? She's dead, Donald. Maybe against Mackenzie Dern. Yeah, could be. Could be. Chances. Matt, go ahead. What were you going to say about one championship?
Okay, here's the thing. You only have so many nights in a week, and I don't want to spend 7 nights of my week just watching MMA.
Yeah,
That's
like,
the honest truth. Like, I watch UFC, I watch the odd Bellator card now, but even that I've had to cut down on a lot just because, like, life and stuff. But yeah, you can't spend every night indoors watching MMA, and that's how many major promotions there are in the world to basically, unless you have that level of dedication.
I flew home last night, and, you know, we had supper, and we took a bit of a pause. So when I'm really looking forward to some of these cards, again, some people have reached out and they said, we want to see you guys break down grappling tournaments, ADCC. Not a damn chance.
No.
Not a chance. I'm going to stick to MMA. We'll go with one PFL, Bellator when the time is right.
We have hobbies, guys.
Yeah, and we have done that in the past, but yeah, we're going to see how it shakes out because you got an awkward time with next weekend not having any UFC cards. Now we got to punch up, Matt. We got to punch up.
Again, we can get people fired up for this card.
We got to have a look at the fight of the night. And Matt, all damn week, people have talked about how Slava Borshchev is going to knock out Mike Davis. Mike Davis looking like a snack on the scales.
I thought he looked really good,
He's bodied up even more. But the trouble is with Mike Davis, it's the injuries. It was everything that's busted in his right shoulder, kind of ahead of his fight against Mason Jones. He breaks his left hand, tossing out those sick boxing combos. And then for Slava Borshchev, obviously he loses his last fight. He gets out wrestled by Marchikasi, noted wrestler. But when you do look at it for Slava Borshchev, striker versus striker, he really puts it together. It's just, is he going to be able to do it against Mike Davis? Because if Davis comes out a boxing-heavy approach like we've seen in the past, that's a great opportunity for Slava Borshchev. And that's what ultimately makes it into a fight of the night.
100%. I do somewhat agree with some of those people on social media who think Slava's going to show up the better version of himself, because this is a matchup that is going to let him showcase those parts of his skill set. He is great on the feet. He does have great speed. We all know how good his body attacks are as well. But I do agree with you. I just think Mike Davis has that element to his game and a little bit more to go on with his grappling if it does end up going there. I think that if this fight is heavily contested on the feet, though, that's going to give us one of those fight of the night style fights that we both think this is going to become.
And I see it over there. I mean, you got Mills in the chat, MMA Locker Room, working Bellator 286 Media Day. Who's the best underdog in the Bellator card? You know what? You asked and you're there. So let's have a look at it. Max Roshkov's an underdog, or at least par with Mike Hamill. Mike Hamill bangs. Max Roshkov, since he left the UFC, is on fire, and his jiu-jitsu is very good.
Here's the thing. Jeremy Kennedy could beat Aaron Pico. Aaron Pico doesn't always show up the best version of himself, and Jeremy Kennedy is extremely well-rounded. But the problem is, since he is really well-rounded, I do think it's going to be hard for JBC to find that one area of MMA for him to really be able to go out there and have a lot of success against Aaron Pico. But the odds on that are very one-sided, and I was surprised to see that just because Kennedy is the much more experienced fighter in that matchup, and he's fought a very high level of competition throughout his career.
I'd say Roshkov over Hamill, but again, I love Mike Hamill fights, and that one's really close. And then the other one, Enrique Barzola, Juan Archuleta. Barzola's a favorite. Archuleta at the weigh-ins didn't look all that great.
You're right.
That one's a catchweight, so we'll see where that one goes. Our second one on this card, this one's now a catchweight at 140 pounds. You have John Castaneda, Sexy Maxi versus Willie Cat, Daniel Santos. I think this is a great fight. I haven't seen a lot of people picking Santos. It worries me about the fact that this is catchweight. John Castaneda came in at 139.5, Willie Cat at 138.5. I think the fight still is going to be a banger. It's just, where's the cardio for both guys? Why was it a catchweight? I couldn't find any answers, and I really did flip a lot of stones for that one. But with Castaneda, well-rounded, I like this matchup. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
And this is such a good fight that even with the question marks surrounding the weight and with some of the red flags in the matchup, I still think it's going to result in a very fun fight. I know we were both pretty high or pretty big on Castaneda at the start of the week, but I think Willie Cat does have a great chance to win. We all know how explosive he can be, how just unorthodox of his entries can be with his takedowns, how unique of a fighter he is. So no matter what version of either guy we get this weekend, I keep on saying this weekend, today I should say, I think this should be a great fight no matter what.
I mean, Donnie Dimes is saying, I like Willie Cat, but yeah, Castaneda. And Brandor hitting up the super chat. Let's go. Can't wait to see my guy Guido Canetti win. Matt, you know what? Just for Brandor and for everybody that, if you've never tuned into Question Mark Kicks, what we're going to do, start at the bottom of the card, go all the way up to the top, and then we reset the deck as we go. If there was anything throughout the week, the weigh-ins, whatever, might have scared us off of something, we ended up watching more tape, we saw something throughout the week, we can change the pick. So for Brandor, and just for Brandor, Matt, I'll start off with
Let's do it,
Randy
as we
Costa and Guido Canetti. If you don't know about the Argentinian that's in his 40s in the bantamweight division in the UFC, This guy can bang, especially in the first round. And you saw that in his fight against Mana Martinez. He kind of broke the mold because first round, he looked amazing. Second round, didn't look good. Third round, beginning of the end for Guido, Guido rallied in the third round of that fight. Now, I know he didn't win that fight. He lost it by split, but Guido Canetti's kind of broken the mold. And if you watch before his last fight, where he did end up getting a win, and he looked really good against Chris Moutinho, the guy was yoked up on the social medias, and he still is. So I really do think this is a fun fight. Malone Hart hitting up a giant super chat. Listen, Donald E. guys, Malone Hart really supporting the channel and saying keep doing the great
Yamasaki Hart over here.
Glad y'all are back at it after a bye week. And listen, we had a lot of fun, and I will fist bump and pump tires, Matt. Dana White's Contender Series.
I brought it back in the end.
Blew the friggin' doors off it. Matt, you started, and listen, this
was bad.
Matt started 2-4. He ended 6-4. I mean, just absolutely lit the world on fire. I ended up at 8-2. I had a lot of fun with that. So that was fun. This is fun. Prince Vegeta's son, Randy Costa, got the secret juice.
He does.
From a guy who ended up eating liver with the Liver King at Bellator.
I never thought Paulo Costa would be such a likable figure outside of the cage, just as like a person. Like, Paulo Costa you don't look at and think, wow, that's a guy who's going to have a fun personality. Think of Luke Rockhold, for instance. I don't know what I'm doing with my hands, but like, Paulo just seems to get more and more popular every time he's on camera, which is nice to see for an athlete that I never thought that would happen for.
So a few things on the card, Matt, and I do see it there from Mike Ross saying, let's be real, Bellator card is way better tonight. I wish that maybe we did the Bellator card instead of the UFC card because people decided to go right on past old Jan Xiaonan.
This is the good thing about this fight, though. It's a do-or-die fight for both of these fighters, without a doubt. Like, the loser is definitely going to go home, and it's a rare fight where it's a close one, but I think either guy could lose via first-round stoppage. I know that's a weird thing to say, because normally when you think close fights, it's split decisions, it's controversial, unanimous decisions, but both guys do have that kind of finishing power in their styles, and Costa does burn so hot in that first round. I really do think with him, it's not that he has poor cardio. I don't think he has great cardio by any means. I just think he hasn't been able to find a good rhythm throughout a lot of his fights, because he is so kick heavy. He's just throwing a lot of high energy techniques a lot. So maybe there is a gauge where he could find throughout his MMA career that could really help him. But until we do see that happen, it is really hard to pick Randy Costa with a lot of confidence in any fight, if we're being completely honest. But I think this is the type of fight that is favorable enough for him with the matchmaking that he can still get the win.
Well, and that was the thing for Randy Costa, especially in his last fight. You saw that against Tony Kelly, where he actually lost the first round. And then in the second round, he didn't come out all that hot, and it was Kelly's body work that really was the story of the fight. And Tony Kelly's the type of guy that likes to fight behind a jab, but he had an injured lead shoulder, so he threw a lot of kicks and a lot of shots to the body. You look at the odds in this one, Costa's still a really big favorite. Open -260, -303. We have a look at Guido Canetti. Open +220, +240 or thereabouts. Brandor hitting us back up in the super chat.
Thank you, Brandor.
For Urban Men of New Jersey, who only ever shows up to talk smack, I don't know where you are on the good weeks, but you're here on the week where we just said we had a heck of a time with Contender Series, Matt. 85% of the fans have Randy Costa to get the win in this one. The only thing that worries me is he will leave his chin out there in the wind. I was going kayaking this morning. I posted that one on Twitter. Why not? But if you look at it for Canetti, I like the pace that he puts on in that round. It's just, will he burn too hot? It's really the story for both of these guys. I like Costa with the fact that he will switch it up between the different levels. Guido Canetti has a great, southpaw stance where he comes in, kicking your leg, going heavy with that slapping body kick or kick to the body. So Canetti could be a good pick as an underdog. I will go with youth on the side of Randy Costa. I touched on it earlier on in the week, him switching gyms so much. American Combat Gym for this matchup. That's Charles Rose's gym, so keep an eye out on that one. Looks like he's been working his striking for this matchup. I will go with Costa, but again, I don't necessarily love the fact that he's so big of a favorite.
He's really going to have to show us something different in this fight. I think it's fair to say.
Having picked Canetti against Moutinho as an underdog, Canetti's last time out, it tempts me a little bit, but I will go with Costa.
I also have Costa in this matchup. Should be a fun fight for as long as it lasts. I really do think so. And just to address the chat, Donnie Dimes, I couldn't agree anymore with you. I'm so sick and tired of the Apex. Like, let's get the show on the road again. Let's get fans back involved with sports. It's just like, even watching the NBA, there was like that weird season and a half where there weren't fans. It felt different watching it. With MMA, think about the crazy fight night cards we've had in London. Think of all the big pay-per-views that sell out. Those feel like bigger cards, even when they're not necessarily big cards, just because they have that kind of atmosphere with the fans. So, just kind of a side rant there, but I really do feel like we're missing out on that kind of atmosphere by them not taking this show on the road.
And the worst part about it, what the hell are they doing with no media there? Like, anything could go on. Who's going to report about it?
Mark Zuckerberg could be in attendance.
Yeah, whatever that's about. But Matt, our next fight, we have Julija Stoliarenko taking on Chelsea Chandler. And we touched on this at the start of the week. Chandler was in an interview with James Lynch, said that, listen, there were a few issues trying to cut the weight, trying to get down to 135 pounds, and yeah, she did allude to the fact that it was a thyroid issue. The exact quote, I have it right here. We had found some medical issues. I've been having some issues with my thyroid, so that was kind of the reason why my weight wasn't going down as fast, and she would consider and prefer fighting at 145 pounds. You got to make sure that you read the exact quote, but yes, those were the issues. So for Stoliarenko, on a roll, finally in the UFC, she was 0-4 to start. She got her first round submission win by armbar against Jessica Rose Clark. And for Chandler, 4-1. So I'd really like to see what the folks out there are thinking about this matchup. I'd really, like to gauge where you're at on this one. Donnie Dimes saying Stoliarenko, ultimate expert analyst saying thyroid, nothing to worry about.
Isn't it like a pretty important part of your endocrine system?
Yeah, it's a really important part of your endocrine system. So when you do focus in on this matchup, Matt, I think Chelsea Chandler is the better striker. I think she's the more aggressive striker. I know we kind of differed on
No, I agree with you on the point. My whole point was her aggressiveness eliminates the advantage she has in the striking. Chandler is the better striker, but if you're constantly closing the distance with your own striking against someone who is really good in the clinch, who is a very good grappler, I just think you're almost doing yourself a disservice. So I think if Chandler was able to stand on the outside, I think it could help her a lot.
Ultimate expert analyst saying she feels better. If anything, she's been fighting without it being attended to. That's a good point. But she was fighting without it being attended to at featherweight. So, she's supposed to make the move down to bantamweight.
None of us are doctors. Let's just all admit
exactly.
that much.
So Clay is saying, Ola lads, going with Chandler for the upset. And again, when you focus in on this matchup, Matt, for Chandler, it's reckless abandon with the striking. It's rock'em sock'em, low hands walking in. We've seen her hit by short little shots. Kind of, we touched on this not that long ago, and I wish I could remember. Oh, it's the Joaquim Silva fight when he was taking on Ricky Glenn. It's like Ricky Glenn, little tiny punches from this far away, and they drop Silva.
No, that's a good point.
Chandler got dropped by a little left hand like that in her last fight. Kind of scurried on back and hit a couple more times. Dominated the entirety of the fight, but it was just one thing to watch out for. If you do look at it for Stoliarenko, she's not really the striker that's going to cause you the biggest of problems. Now, if you look at it in her fight with Lisa Verzosa for the championship over with Invicta, yeah, that was a big part of that fight. But for Stoliarenko, it's her bottom game, it's her armbar game. When you focus in on this matchup, the takedowns are huge for Chandler. She's training with some great fighters, CSA Gym, Cesar Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. This really is one of the tougher matchups to try and figure out on this card. So again, I'd really like to hear from everybody who you have in this one.
I agree with that, but not in the way that like Marvin Vettori versus Robert Whittaker is really difficult to break down, because those are two of the best fighters who are really good at everything. I just think with these fighters, like, if Chandler loses to Stoliarenko, who has started her UFC career out 1-3, it's not the best way to enter the organization. I just think with Stoliarenko, I think she's going to be a little bit more active with her whole grappling game, and I think that's why I ever so slightly do favor her in this matchup. I think if it does end up hitting the mat, I like her with her submission abilities off the back. She's always doing some kind of movement, even if it's not attacking for a submission, just very active from that bottom position. That's why I do like Stoliarenko in this matchup.
Yeah, and Stoliarenko is not crazy with the takedowns, and I see that from Ultimate Expert Analyst as well, really adding a lot to the conversation over there. And I see a lot of people, too, when they focus on Julija Stoliarenko and then Mackenzie Dern in the main event. With Mackenzie Dern, it's her wrestling's not that good, her grappling's not that good, but I'm still picking her. Well, yeah, she doesn't need the takedowns to get all the submissions. Look at her record in the UFC. She's got a couple of blips on the radar, plenty of finished wins, and she's really looked dominant. She doesn't need those offensive takedowns. She can figure out a way to earn the scramble to get the submission.
And you can't think about takedowns just in like the Chael Sonnen sense of like, ooh, I'm gonna rush and shoot power double legs. Like those weird scrambles where you just sort of run at your opponent, try to get a body lock clinch and drag them to the ground. Those are all takedowns, even though they aren't as traditional as your normally wrestling attempts. That's all.
So when it does come to this one, you look at it for Stoliarenko, slight favorite, -120, -105 or thereabouts for Chandler, in and around that +105. You have a look at the votes on Fight Night Picks at Fight Night Picks on Instagram. 65% of the fans have Stoliarenko. 35% have Chelsea Chandler. Chandler could have a great opportunity in this one. Again, her offensive takedowns are great. Her top pressure is pretty darn good. She will just continue to fight and fight and fight for a finish. So I do like Chelsea Chandler in a matchup like this, but I do have Stoliarenko with that grappling. I really do like the armbar, like it's 2010. But again, both of us going with Stoliarenko. You can make a good case for either one of these women to get the win, and I wouldn't hold it over your head if you got it wrong or vice versa. Matt, we have a look at this matchup. You have Max Grishin taking on Philipe Lins. Philipe Lins won $1 million in 2018. He could have just beep beep ridden off into the sunset, but he decided not to. He thought, okay, well, 2019, it's the year to rebuild. He's injured. He's got to make his way back. 2020, I'm going to fight my teammate Andrei Arlovsky and lose that fight. And then I'll go out there and fight Tanner Boser and lose that fight. And then for Lins, he took a really long time off before he moved down to 205. He fights a guy in Marcin Prachnio where there's an opportunity in that one. Now, he was, if I'm not mistaken, a slight underdog. He gets the win over Prachnio, wears on him, big body, big frame, almost like 293-pound Ben Rothwell over with BKFC. I don't know if you saw the weigh-ins there. But for Lins, a good opportunity, taking on an older Max Grishin. The craziest part about it is, Lins isn't a young guy either.
He's not.
That's funny. So Lins, it's not that he's less experienced in combat sports. He just has less of an accumulation of a record than Grishin. Grishin, gonna march forward, kickboxer if anything, decent takedown defense, tries to get right back up. Brandor saying Lins is a quitter in my opinion. He's a millionaire. AG saying Maxim.
Both those things could still be true though.
Maxim minus 110 is a great bet. Grishin slightly overrated. Lins and Grishin are 37-38. I don't want to argue with you, pal. Grishin is so underrated, it's lawful. Donnie Dimes, Grishin got my respect. Old man fight, Prince Vegeta's son. You got a couple of those on this card.
That's
and
true.
Donnie Dimes saying he's skilled. Matt, I think this is a really good fight. And obviously, at the end of the day, it's not just a gut check fight, it's a skill check fight between these two guys.
And that's why I said, I don't know if this is a really good fight. Because, like, the loser's probably never going to fight people that we've recognized. And that's the issue. Like, this really is a do-or-die fight for both these men's career. Just because they are a little bit more advanced with their age in this division.
The loser gets Anton Turkalj. Like, that's really it. That's tough.
But these guys are in a strange position because they are so accomplished throughout their MMA careers. They just came to the UFC at an awful point in their lives, for being completely honest. Like, there's a better Max Grishin in the past that could have come over a lot earlier, probably would have gone on a bit of a run and had some success. And same thing for Lins. I just think at 205, I slightly do favor the striking of Grishin. I do think he is the more damaging guy on some of the in-betweens. I like some of the flurries that Lins is able to accomplish when he does have his feet moving under him. But let's think about Lins. Sometimes he will kind of move well for a big guy. He's got sort of a slumbering movement, but sometimes he is quite stationary, and that's the version of him that he does not want to be in this matchup. If he does find himself moving back a lot against Grishin, if Grishin's able to put some combinations together, then I do think Grishin can have success on the feet, but this is a tough fight because I can see if Lins can get that takedown, especially really early on, it's going to put enough doubt into the mind of Grishin, so where he's not just going to be able to let go with his hands.
So first of all day OJ over there in the chat, make sure you follow him on Twitter, saying don't like the lack of volume for Grishin, but he's got power and Lins hasn't looked great. We also have Clay saying I think Lins versus Turkalj is the thing. OJ says winner gets Hannah Cyphers. Hannah's still in the UFC.
She's scrappy.
She is scrappy. She couldn't figure out that knee bar leg lock attempt there from Mackenzie Dern. She tried to kick the butt.
Jiu-jitsu really was her downfall.
Well, she's still kicking around. Ultimate Expert, an analyst saying Grishin looked old last fight, but they both look slow lately. Because he was at a 13-pound disadvantage in the weight. And he won all three judge scorecard 30-27. But again, Max Grishin, Philipe Lins, we have a look at the votes. At Fight Night Picks on Instagram, you get your say. 81% going with Grishin, 19% with Lins. We have a look at the odds in the matchup. Grishin is the favorite, open minus 110, minus 171, so they open at par. Lins plus 142. I do like Max Grishin in the matchup. For me, it's the leg kicks that he employs. They are some of the best in this division. I think his boxing combinations are quite good. For Grishin, we'll see what happens after this fight. But, I mean, Lins, forward pressure, heavy on top. We'll see if he's able to employ that. And you talked about it. I mean, you talk about a guy that walks forward, throws caution to the wind, and just will continue to pummel out those long-range straight attacks. Lins is one of those guys. So he could have some success with those flurries. And it's not necessarily what lands and what doesn't. It's in the mind of a judge. When you watch that really can score you some points, as silly as it might sound. So I do like Grishin in the matchup. This is another tight contest on this card.
Without a doubt, but It's a very hard time to predict a fight where you have plus 35-year-olds at 205. Like, anyone can knock anybody out. They're big enough to have that kind of fight-ending power. I do like Grishin in the matchup, though.
Question there from Mike Ross. Does Monstro have gyno or is he just fat? This is a picture from when he was a heavyweight. So, light heavyweight man now. He's got the salad. And in our next matchup, you talk about a guy that's had salad and really kind of switched it up all over the place. Brendan Allen.
Nothing like this, though.
Oh, that's enough. But for Brendan Allen, Matt, he's taking on Krzysztof Jotko, and we disagreed on the pick for this one.
And I've been flip-flopping all day long, if you want the honest truth.
Oh, boy. So for Brendan Allen, he did command a lion's share of the votes at Fight Night Picks. 2 out of 3 people that voted on it went with Allen. 67% have him to win. I believe Jotko's the favorite at this point. He is. So Jotko open plus 105. The line's kind of flip-flopped all week. He's a minus 123. Brendan Allen coming in plus 101. For me, I look at it and I think Allen, obviously, this is the most mild take ever. Who's going to win by finish if anybody wins by finish? Well, it's Brendan Allen.
And that's what I was going to say. One of us is going to look dumb no matter what. Because either Krzysztof Jotko is going to win a convincing 30-27, or Brendan Allen's going to go out there, ground and pound him for 4 minutes and choke him out.
Best part about it, the comment way up there from Coca saying, it's not Turkali. You Americans have no way to pronounce the last 2 words.
You got to not just go after people
on its own.
Might admit the.
I've said Turkal. I've said Turkali. I'm not American. I'm a Canadian.
Why do you get so fired up?
When it does come down to this one, Matt, again, you're right. And when you look at Krzysztof Jotko facing a very high-level competition for a very long time, same thing for Brendan Allen, even since he was an amateur.
And the way that I think about this fight is, when you get into playoff series, and really any major sport, it's less about the major things that both teams do well, and it's more about the small things that they incorporate to make their big skills even more accentuated. And that's kind of how I look at this fight. Krzysztof Jotko is not just a volume striker who doesn't have great finishing ability and good takedown defense. Yes, if you just want to do like the 10,000-yard look at it, that's kind of what he is. But if you want to look a little bit closer, I think the clinch is going to be really important in this fight for both guys, because Jotko's one of those guys who, if you do get on the inside of him, if you are able to back him up against the cage, he will try to go for that body-to-body clinch, push you off, and then circle back to the cage. Now, if he can do that and keep his feet under him the whole time, I don't think Brendan Allen's going to be able to buck him off balance and then use that for a hip toss or any kind of takedown attempt off of that one motion. But the problem is, if Jotko's feet don't follow him exactly while he's doing that kind of a transition, that's when you get your own weight out in front of your feet. That's when your opponent is going to be able to utilize one of those trips and such, and that's when Brendan Allen can look really good in this fight. I just think Allen is going to struggle with the striking and landing meaningful shots on the feet, and that's why I do ever so slightly side with Jotko. Again, I've admitted, I've been flip-flopping on this all day long. I've been thinking about this fight quite a bit, because Brendan Allen definitely has the better chance to get a stoppage win, and normally that is who you would like to pick because, okay, they have more methods of victory, but I do like Jotko's defensive ability to just be sound enough on the feet to not take a lot of damage on the feet. Are the grappling exchanges going to be bad? Yes, they are, but if you can just avoid some of those until the last minute, last 30 seconds of the round, I think Jotko can do enough on the in-betweens to just get the rounds, get the moments, and get enough time in the judges' scorecards.
Sub is saying, now let's see Paul Allen's record. Oh, Paul, I mean, nah, that's enough. But when you do focus in on this one, Matt, I've seen a couple of different things, so let's break it down from the chat, because you folks are really lighting it up today. Elijah Bennett saying, I can't bet on a person like Jotko has very low output. Allen will have bigger shots and will bring the fight to him. Okay, you can look at UFC stats and it'll paint you a picture, and then I can explain why it will. Brendan Allen, 4.15 to 4.18 strikes landed to absorb per minute. It's good that he has above average output. It's bad that he has above average damage absorbed, and his striking defense percentage is 44%. To Jotko, who has a positive strike differential, even though he lands less than average strikes. So it's 3.02 to 2.26. All of this to say, Jotko is in and out of the pocket quicker. He doesn't take as much damage, and he will just continue to come forward and throw a lot of volume. Whereas for Brendan Allen, it's big action, big reward, big action, bad consequence if you end up getting hit.
Exactly.
So you focus in on the fights. Both these guys obviously lost to Sean Strickland, and that could be a microcosm to the fight. But Brendan Allen struggled with some of those bigger shots from Strickland that were peppered in with his volume, whereas Krzysztof Jotko just kind of stayed on the back foot and really did a carousel on that one. So I do like Brendan Allen. I think he will hit with some of those harder shots, and he can mix it up to the different levels, feint for takedowns and throw some different looks. But for Jotko, training out of ATT with a guy like Thiago Alves and all the wrestlers that are encompassed at middleweight, you can focus in on it for both of these two guys, but I do like Allen in this matchup, although, again, we can make arguments for both.
Without a doubt. This could be a really fun fight, I think.
All right, Matt, so we'll move it on to the next fight, and we're looking at Uptown Funk You Up Ronson. I mean, you've got Mark Ronson. No, you've got Jesse Ronson taking on Joaquim Silva. And Matt, for Silva, we've seen high highs, like his win over Jared Gordon. We've seen low lows where lightweight Ricky Glenn's knocking him out with some awkward shots after Glenn had been out for quite some time. For Jesse Ronson, high highs, like when he's winning in Canada against pick your title challenger in Canada, or when he's fighting Nicholas Dalby on short notice up a weight class. And then there's low lows where he's getting ground out by Rafa Garcia and submitted. So it's been a weird look for Ronson. And I know the UFC stat, like he was 0-3 with 3 split decision losses first time in the UFC years ago. And since he's come back, he's 0-1 with a no contest, even though in the no contest, he didn't look good the whole length of it. He looked bad up until he landed his good shot and then got Dalby down on the ground. But it'll all depend on which version of both guys we get, and this kind of feels like a bit of a crapshoot of a fight.
Without a doubt.
I'd really like to hear from everybody in the comment section who they have on this one.
It's going to be a fun fight for as long as it lasts, but again, this is one of those fights where it could end via any of the 6 true outcomes, if you will, and I would not be surprised whatsoever. Knockout, submission, decision win for either one of these guys. It's just, for Silva, he's had such an interesting career, because early on, he did have the skills that you look for in an up-and-coming contender, and he did have kind of that unique look from Brazil. He was sort of this underground contender, but the problem was, it's like a really nice sports car that's not safe whatsoever because it's a really nice sports car. Like you
just driving a '98 Dodge Viper and peeling the tires
kind
sideways
of, yeah.
on the highway.
It might be cool, and if you're looking at it in a Walmart parking lot, you're like, wow, that's a sharp-looking car. But the problem is, once it does try to get dirty, it does start to fail in some of those aspects, and that's been the problem with Silva. He has good jiu-jitsu, he has good power in his hands, he is a decent striker, but the problem is, if you hit him one time clean, and I'm being completely serious, like one clean shot does tend to at least make him fight in a different way. It's not going to knock him out necessarily, but you know what I mean? It stuns him. It makes him be a little bit more tentative, and that's what I do worry about, even though I'm still picking Silva in this fight, because I still believe he is the more skilled fighter in this too. His durability issues are very scary, though.
Like, again, I did the example at the start of the week. It was like, pop, 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 pop,
And he's down.
like, Raggedy Andy, what are you doing, pal? So I do like Joaquim Silva with the Neto BJJ moniker. Obviously, you talk again about strength of schedule in terms of not who he's fought, but who he's trained with. You really do like to see that. Now, for Ronson, he does train at Adrenaline. We talked about it before. I mean, Bazooka Joe Valtellini, Mark Hominick, there are some very big names out of that gym. And I did see it up there earlier, a little bit of a talk. He's the Dion Phaneuf of Canadian MMA. Wow. I mean, Double Dion made a ton of money. Loves to golf.
He was on the cover of an NHL video game. I don't think Joaquim Silva's ever going to be on the cover of UFC 5.
Or I think it's more Jesse Ronson. But when you do focus in on it, I think it'll be a lot of fun. Sabas is saying, I think Dana White's going to retire tonight. I don't think he's going to retire.
There would definitely be media there if he was going to retire. Because that's something that you can't hide until the day of. Like, Brock Lesnar was supposed to be this big secret, and they figured that out a month before it happened.
Mike Ross, I had a 91, 3000 GT, looked awesome, but what a POS. Man, I love the not the light bar, but the light that was almost like a half moon at the top, 3000 right on it. The old Mitsubishi. Love a Mitsubishi. Matt, great warranties, but are they really there with the resale? I don't know. Matt, old guy fight. So, if you look at it for Aleksei Oleinik and you look at it for Ilir Latifi, Ilir Latifi is beefy and he weighs more than he did in his last fight. Aleksei Oleinik hasn't weighed this much in a UFC fight ever. His last time out, he weighed 244. Ilir Latifi weighed like 240, but both of these guys put on a lot of weight. I speculate Ilir Latifi's figuring, okay, like I'm going to live my best life. I'm ready for an actual heavyweight fight. If Daniel Cormier can do it, I can do it too. Whereas for Aleksei Oleinik, can I bully a little bit with my weight? What's Latifi going to show up at? So then they just played a balloon contest, and, well, Oleinik showed up a little bit bigger. But when you do look at it for Oleinik, obviously the guy looks, rode hard and put up wet. So for Oleinik, 60 wins. Can he get it done one more time by submission? Or can Latifi kind of throw the hammers that we know him for? And I say this and I really boil it down and simplify it. But for Latifi, since he's been in the UFC, like, we're clubbing to close the distance. We're taking it down to wear on you.
It's wild how relevant he's been able to be, though, throughout his UFC tenure. And that's kind of the thing that jumped out at me. Ilir Latifi made his UFC debut in a main event against Gegard Mousasi.
And he got lit up.
He got lit up, but it was a main event at 205. There was a 3-round fight where Conor McGregor made his UFC debut. Like, Ilir Latifi's been around for a little while now, and I don't think he ever really got the respect that he deserved for just being a top 15 ranked fighter for as long as he's been able to be throughout his career, because there really has never been a point throughout Ilir Latifi's career where he hasn't been a ranked fighter. And really, to be
Until lately,
but still, to be a ranked fighter for the majority of a decade is a really impressive task, and that's just really all I wanted to say there. I'd be completely honest, though. This is one of those fights where I feel like I don't want to say casual fan, but your average UFC fan might not be all that excited for this matchup. I was really excited for this fight, and now I'm not.
James hit up the super chat. Can a man with no neck be choked out?
Tonight we find out.
Well, so really appreciate the super chat. Super chat's been going on fire, and if you can't donate to the super chat, toss us a like, because Dern Xiaonan has not been like our golden goose of video. I will say that. We put a lot into it.
We do. But back to the fight.
I sung.
The thing about Aleksei Oleinik is he was a light heavyweight middleweight who basically just didn't cut weight and fought at the heavyweight division. And this is very much a boxing mindset, but I'm never going to get off this thinking. When you automatically start gaining a lot of weight later on in your career, that's when your career really is over. And for Oleinik, physically he did look the same for the majority of his fights leading up to this one, but the fact that he has gained a lot of weight is very worrying for the age that he's at.
There's a little squiggle on a piece of paper in the corner of this office, and it stands out very prominently on that poster. The poster is Vulcan Smith. The squiggle belongs to a man from New York. He played football at Hofstra. Matt, can you answer the trivia question? Jean Vellante. He put on a lot of weight at the end of his career.
Yep.
And things didn't go well for him. So I wonder how... Excuse me, it will play out for Oleinik. I need something to drink.
But it is the truth. Like, again, that's what they've always said in boxing. That's a very big rule in boxing. But for Oleinik, I look at it the exact same way. Think about all these fighters that we've seen go from light heavyweight to heavyweight. They don't do it in the prime of their careers. Gustafson's not good anymore, and that pains me to say. Ovince St. Prue's not the fighter who fought for a title against John Jones way back when. Like, all these fighters who have made these light heavyweight to heavyweight jumps, and I know Aleksei Oleinik didn't fight at light heavyweight, but you get the idea. They make these 20, 30-pound leaps in their weight all of a sudden when they're 38 or up. It's never a great sign for the motivation of that athlete. I'm not sitting here saying you have to love Ilir Latifi and his MMA game, but if you've ever wanted to pick Ilir Latifi in a matchup, this is probably the one. Just for Oleinik, I really don't like the weight gain that he has shown, and unless Ilir Latifi's walking into this fight thinking, hey, I'm fighting a 45-year-old, like I'm just going to throw hammers and we'll see what happens, then I don't like him if that's his thought process. But if Ilir Latifi goes in there, uses his wrestling defensively, just is a better striker than Aleksei Oleinik, he doesn't have to go out there and look like Alex Pereira, but just do enough to be able to win a lot of the exchanges. I think Ilir Latifi can look good enough to win.
Eric Cote's getting in late. Professor Chris saying, I bet we can all agree this fight will be awful. And somebody had mentioned the amount of submissions for Oleinik. It's 46 on his career. He fought Chael Sonnen years ago. Clay saying, I went with Oleinik. Loser should get matched against Collier. Bad fight for Collier either way. Poor Jake Collier. The highs are high. The lows are so low. But when you do focus in on this one, Matt, I will throw it on over to the Fight Night Picks fans on the Instagram. You folks get your due. And on this one, 58% with Oleinik, 42% with Latifi. I'm still going with Oleinik. I'm not going to switch up my mindset, even with the weight difference. There was a great point made. So listen, I will disagree with some people sometimes, and I'll agree with them when I agree with them. But Ultimate Expert Analyst saying, the refs might look at this a different way for Oleinik. I think if he takes a few bad shots, I can see him turtle up and Oleinik just Latifi continue to fire away and a referee just ending it and not letting him take a lot of punishment.
I agree 100%. I don't think he's going to flat cold KO Aleksei Oleinik, but I could see him wobbling Oleinik on the feet, Oleinik just sort of shelling up against the cage, Latifi landing a few good shots, because that's what you have to remember. I'm not the biggest Beast in 25-8 fan by any means. I don't think Corey Anderson's a top 5 light heavyweight in the world, if we're all being honest, but Corey Anderson looked good against Ilir Latifi up until a certain point. Well, okay. Ilir Latifi, I should say, looked good against Corey Anderson up until a certain point where Corey Anderson's cardio was really able to play out. But Latifi landed some really good strikes on Corey Anderson early on in that fight. Now, granted, that was down the weight division. Latifi himself was more in his prime, too. But I do think Latifi is by far the better striker in this matchup.
All right, we'll switch it up. Kingslayer saying the 7-inch reach disadvantage is concerning and the height difference. I mean, Ilir Latifi's always had to overcome that. He's been a smaller guy. Mike Davis taking on Slava Borshchev. And if we get a striking affair, this can be a lot of fun. If Mike Davis decides to wrestle, then buckle your seatbelts because it could be something to watch. Now, Mike Davis, you saw it in some of the pictures, like his UFC official pictures. He was looking a lot bigger than normal. For Slava Borshchev, struggled with the wrestling his last time out, but does Davis have that offensive weapon in his pocket that we saw even in his fight against Mason Jones that he can utilize against Borshchev? Because striking-wise, with Slava, I don't know if he's a right-hand, dominant guy, but as a southpaw, that right hook is mean. The body kick, the high kick that he's able to employ, it is a big part of his game. A lot of people going with Borshchev, and I mean, everybody that commented, I think, this week was going with Borshchev over Davis, but the votes on this one on Instagram, I'll talk about them when we're kind of finished talking about this fight. They sway more Davis than they do Borshchev. So a lot of Borshchev people out there, very vocal about this fight, but not necessarily. The quiet ones are the ones that are voting on the poll.
If Mark Chikasi can out-wrestle you, I'd sure effing hope that Mike Davis can do the same thing. Like, Mark Chikasi's not a natural wrestler. He's incorporated that into his game a lot more as of late. But, like, Mark Chikasi didn't show up like Bo Nickel and everyone was worried about getting taken down by him. Like, this dude's a kickboxer who has really fast hands, who, now that he knows everyone's going to try to grapple him because of his stand-up abilities, now he goes out there and takes down his opponents. I think this fight, more than anything, comes down to range. And yes, what I'm saying ties into what you were saying too, but hear me out. If it's at boxing range, then of course Mike Davis can also take him down because he's going to be close enough to also threaten with his wrestling and threaten with some of his boxing. If it's fought at kickboxing range though, Slava Borshchev is going to have a really good chance to win this fight. Like Mike Davis can be further away from him. It's going to just give him more time to be able to time some of those takedown attempts and really be able to land some damaging shots based on some of those entries. I just think with Mike Davis, he is going to be able to eat a couple of those big shots to get it into the range that does help him. But that is going to be the key. Like, Slava has a pretty good chance in this fight because Mike Davis is going to have to eat a couple power shots to really get into the range where he has a lot of success in. I just think he is going to be able to eat some of those bigger shots and land with his own accuracy. And that's the thing. If Mike Davis goes to the body of Slava Borshchev, I really do think that's going to wear on his gas tank as this fight progresses. Davis does have a good gas tank for someone who does throw very heavy shots. So I think this is going to be an incredible fight. Again, if you want to sell me a package where Borshchev does win, I'm not going to sit here and just completely disagree with you because this is that explosive of a matchup, but I still like Mike Davis.
Well, I mean, K1 champ multiple times over for Slava Borshchev. For Mike Davis, he's got a lot of muscle on his frame, but he tends to wear it well, and his cardio tends to hold up. But every now and again, we see a fighter like this in Mike Davis that has a lot of promise, takes a long time off, takes a fight, and then it's got to be a big reset. This could be that one, and it's a really good matchup. So, again, one DMO saying Davis puts his wrestling shoes on tonight. Usman hanging out in the chat. Dan Goldstein, Davis by scarf hold. It'll all depend on how Slava makes out with some of the grappling if we get there. 62% of the votes at Fight Night Picks going with Davis to get the win. And when we talk in terms of the odds in this one, Matt, we've got Mike Davis as the favorite. Open minus 250, minus 186 right now. Slava Borshchev open plus 210. Plus 153, so the Borshchev line has switched about 28% towards him. So again, that's the way that it's been going throughout the week. I think Borshchev has a decent chance. Obviously, people talking about gyms and whatnot. Team Alpha Male for Borshchev being a kickboxer, it's a great gym to train with. But we know with kickboxers, listen, everybody's going to try and take you down. It's like the Israel Adesanya game plan. Everybody's going to try it.
But to piggyback off of your camp point, like, look at Song Yadong. He couldn't defend any takedowns when he first came into the UFC. Now he's pretty good at it, and he does train at the same gym. So maybe Borshchev has been able to really upgrade that part of his game, because if he is able to get, like, let's even say UFC average level takedown defense, he's going to be a monster to deal with on the feet, because he will be able to make guys strike with him a lot more. The problem is, I just don't think he's going to ever be able to add that weapon.
And the other thing too, Matt, 400 tuning in, almost 100 likes, 2 seconds. Now, Brandon is saying Davis, one of my top must-see fighters. Too bad he never fights. He had to get all of his right shoulder cleaned up, torn labrum, rotator cuff, bicep, big tent, whatever it was.
Paul George, where I come from.
And he broke his left hand in the fight his last time out. Ultimate expert analyst for not being confrontational with my strong opinions. I like to throw them out there. Y'all have swayed me in the right direction before.
Well,
Ultimate expert analyst. Throw those thoughts out there. We're not going to get too riled up about this stuff. I mean, listen, at the end of the day,
Craig say mispronounces something, I guess.
You enjoy the fights. I enjoy the fights. There's one thing that I don't like. It's when people go, you Americans. Bud.
I don't care. If they don't know what we are, then they don't watch our show enough for me to care about their opinion, Craig. We have a Canadian flag behind us.
That's the Carlos Newton flag, after all. Matt, John Castaneda's taking on Willie Cat Daniel Santos, and this fight at the start of the week, I'll be completely honest, cards on the table. I like John Castaneda a lot. And I don't normally throw it out there, and I don't normally make videos where I'm so one-sided on one fighter, but I was, and I went with John Castaneda. Then in the middle of the week, it was, hey, this fight's not at 135 anymore, it's a catchweight. And then I see John Castaneda on his Instagram, and I'll go over to it because the second to last post, he had kind of like a weird look to him. We're going to go.
You don't love a weird look to him.
No, well, it was like looking off, and then it was carbs near me. That was the caption. I don't know if it's because of Castaneda, but he showed up at 139.5. Daniel Willycat, 138.5. I now don't like the fact that this one is at a catch weight of 140 and not at bantamweight. I still have Castaneda to start the video off, but my confidence now is on not so solid ground. I'll just say that.
I still like Castaneda, though. He is the much more well-rounded fighter in this fight. Now, the thing is, if Castaneda does go out there trying to prove a point that he does have the better stand-up, he could definitely get knocked out by Willie Cat. And I gotta be honest, I love saying Willie Cat might be my favorite nickname in the UFC. I'm not gonna lie. No idea what a Willie Cat is. I wouldn't know.
It's a character on the Portuguese version of
No,
Thundercat.
I know.
Man.
But if you put a picture of a Willy Cat in front of me, I wouldn't be like, oh, I know who that is. I'm just saying. It's fun to say, and I like Daniel Da Silva more because of it. That's all. This is going to be a fun fight, though. Now, the thing about Daniel Santos is he is so explosive on the feet with some of those longer range attacks that you can put together that you really do have to worry about them.
When was he aggressive with those attacks?
Now, that's the problem. In the UFC, we haven't necessarily seen that version of him. Now, he has been exploding for a lot of takedowns from just odd ranges, if we're being completely honest, and if he does do that against Castaneda, I think he's gonna have a really tough fight on his hands. I do agree with you, though. There are a lot of red flags surrounding just the weight and who it is going to favor or hurt, I should say, a little bit more, but I still do think Castaneda is the much more skilled fighter.
Matt Coca saying Canada's on the American continent if I didn't move in the meantime. You turkey. Matt, when we do look at this matchup, there's not an America in South America. We have Castaneda, the more well-rounded guy, a guy who wrestled in college at a hockey school, University of Minnesota, Mankato. But you do focus in on the odds in this matchup. I'm eager because I don't open these before we do the videos to see if it's moved any. So you had Castaneda minus 215 up until the start of the week. Now he's minus 190 or thereabouts. So it's moved on Santos. He opened plus 130, plus 158. As it's gone on. So if we do look at this one and we focus in on the votes at Fight Night Picks, I gotta skip through because I went to Castaneda's Instagram. 77% of the fans going with Sexy Maxi to the 23% that have Willie Cat. If Willie Cat wins, it's probably going to be more fun. If Castaneda wins, I like the in and out range. Southpaw look against an orthodox fighter from Castaneda. He's really able to accentuate that aspect of his game. And I think his wrestling could be an X factor. We've seen Santos get some really interesting submissions or submission looks 2, 3, 4 years ago when he was fighting on the regional scene. And he beat some good competition as well, but it's been a really long time. I haven't seen it from Santos. And I'm the type of person, if you follow Fight Night Picks for any length of time, I'm not on you this time, but if you can get it done in this fight, I'll really consider that as we move forward. So I have Castaneda here, but it should be an interesting fight while it lasts.
I think it can still be a really fun fight even if Castaneda does win. Again, I can see a TKO victory for him if Santos does start to tire as this fight progresses, because Castaneda, I do think, has a better pace to his game. He just has a steadier fight from round 1 to round 2 to round 3, and that's why I do favor Castaneda in this matchup. I think it could be ugly for him early, of course, just because Santos is such an explosive guy, but still, I like Castaneda quite a bit in this fight.
Matt Salmon Bees talking about hockey. I went to see the Habs on Thursday night. Play the Jets. I went by myself. It was weird. Matt, we have a big time fight coming up. Sadiq Youssef taking on Don Shameless Shanus.
Can I be honest? I see a lot of people be like, oh, Don Shanus got a really good chance, all this, all that. I don't think he, not a hot take or anything. Sadiq Youssef is a minus 1,100 favorite. But, at a certain point, we do have to realize that some guys deserve to be minus 1,100 favorites. And this is one of those rare instances where I do agree with where the odds are exactly. And how stacked they are to one side.
95% of those that decided to answer the poll at Fight Night Picks, you can see it up there on that screen there before, 95% going with Sadiq Youssef. Shanus has a chance with the fact that if you watch the way that he fights, balls to the wall. It's just like Chelsea Chandler earlier on in this card.
Exactly.
Balls to the wall, very aggressive with his takedowns. His cardio doesn't tend to hold up in some of his fights, especially when we go late second round into the third round. But he will really throw with a lot of aggression. And for Sadiq Youssef, he normally needs a round to start up. And he's gotten caught against Gabriel Benitez, against Arnold Allen. He will get clipped in the first round until he starts to get into it. If you like Don Shanus, that's why you like Don Shanus in a matchup like this against you.
Oh, yeah, 100%. The problem is, I think other than that one extremely specific path to victory for Don Shainis, this is a really tough fight for him. Like, Sadiq Yusuff has great takedown defense, has offensive takedowns in his own repertoire, has great power punching, is pretty good defensively. I know he can get caught early on in fights, but he does seem to be one of those fighters who, once you do catch him, it kind of jolts him into gear, and then he will start to make a lot more sound defensive choices. And Sadiq has really big power in his own hands, too. Like, if he starts to hurt Shainis early, well, that's kind of Shainis' best chance to win the fight. So if he doesn't win in that first minute, 2 minute, 3 minute flurry, I really do favor Sadiq a lot. It's nothing against Don Shainis. It's one of those fights where, I don't feel good saying, oh, I think Sadiq Yusuff's going to mop him. It's just, this guy's a ranked fighter who was getting ready to fight one of the best fighters in the world just a couple weeks ago, and now he's fighting someone who's making their short notice debut in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, we see, like Spot or like A-Pot, I apologize. I was wearing my glasses before this, and now I'm not. Shainis got dropped like 4 times in round 1 his last fight. He got dropped by a man who was, 9-7 at the time? It wasn't the sexiest record. The other thing here, and Alex Fox saying sup, gents, Yusuff is I can't say that word. We don't use that word on the channel. The old L word. But when you do focus in on this one, I just want to say one thing. Mike Ross saying Don hasn't fought anyone. I slept on Don Shainis when he took on Chris Lencioni. I put it in the video. Lencioni did Contender Series or UFC, and he didn't show up to that fight, and Shainis won. He also beat Cody Pfister, 4-fight UFC veteran. So to say that he hasn't fought anyone is completely untrue. But yes, both of us going with Yusuff. We'll move on to the next fight, Matt. We have Raoni Barcelos taking on Trevin Jones. Matt, like I said, with Lencioni taking on Shainis, I didn't think Lencioni showed up. Who the hell knows what version of Jones and Barcelos are going to show up for this one?
We don't, but here's the thing. The B version of one of these fighters fights a lot better than the B version of another one of these fighters. Now, if we get the best version of both these guys, Raoni Barcelos is definitely the more well-rounded of the two. He definitely uses his grappling a lot more. Not to say Jones is a bad grappler by any means. He's a very good wrestler himself, but he uses wrestling a lot to set up his own power shots and kind of vice versa. One of those more traditional wrestle boxers. But the problem is, the B side of Barcelos is a very similar fighter to the fighter who's A side. He's just like 20% slower. And yes, that does hurt his style, but still, his skills are still going to be his skills no matter what. There just won't be as much of an explosion behind those skills. The problem is, Trevin Jones' B version of him is a very inactive fighter. It's not a fighter who is just a lesser version or a fighter with the sliders turned down. It's a fighter who doesn't even have the sliders turned on in some cases.
Well, and the trouble is, that was my thoughts of Jones coming into the UFC. It was wait, power shot. Wait, nice jab that meets you when you're coming in, that jolts your head back, and then he's able to mount his offense. If you look at Trevin Jones, his last 2 fights, I mean, it's the Keith Richards riff, but he never gets start me up.
And at a certain point, how many times do you have to see it until it just becomes kind of what you are? Like, Tyron Woodley hit that stage of his career, and I understand there's different reasons. Tyron Woodley became a champion. We've seen this a lot. Champions get the belt, then they become a more defensive version of themselves. But that's the weird thing about Jones. It's not like he reached this lofty height and then decided to fight safe. That's just sort of what he's become.
Well, and I'm glad Alex Fox is able to join so late, because throwing the popcorn, I like Barcelos, though. I'm in agreement with you, Alex. Like, if I'm going to bring up the poll here at Fight Night Picks, we'll see where everybody's at. 70% have Barcelos to win, 30% have Trevin Jones. Now, Jones has been able to show up as a big underdog in those UFC wins. He got a performance bonus when he beat Timur Valiev. Didn't look necessarily great until he did, but if you look at it for Jones, open plus 240, and then the line dropped, and now it's back up again. So plus 200 is where Jones is at, and Barcelos minus 244. I think if Barcelos can pour it on, like Donnie Dimes just said, he can get the win. Now, his volume wasn't terrible against Victor Henry. It just didn't match Victor Henry's. And I didn't think Victor Henry was as good a striker as Barcelos was, in just complete honesty. I thought, listen, if anything, Henry might have some success with the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu, which is Barcelos' base, because he has freestyle wrestling and jiu-jitsu background. But I do like Barcelos in the matchup. Again, I'd keep it popcorn like Alex Fox said, but I will go with Barcelos. It's an ever so slightly on a decent favorite, so take that for what it's worth.
Exactly. I think Barcelos is the more well-rounded guy, and that's the thing. I just trust his worst version more in this fight. I know that's a weird thing to say, but if neither guy shows up to be the best version of themselves, and that's the thing about Jones, I just think he has become more of a defensively minded fighter, and if he does get back on the volume numbers against a guy like Barcelos, I think it's going to be hard for him to really make up the difference later on in the fight.
And I saw it there from Clay talking about Victor Henry. I see Victor Henry interviews are kind of going all over the place. So for La Mangusta, he's going to be taking on Rafael Assunção. at the next Fight Night card. So that's some pretty exciting
Big
stuff.
fight for him. Good that they're rewarding Henry for just being such a big underdog, being able to win that.
Yeah, I really do like that matchup, Matt. The co-main event. Kamaru boy. Can you get it up? He's taking on Francisco Trinaldo, Matt. I don't know if Randy Brown rocks a diamond cup or not, if he's trying to get it up for the nickname. But for Randy Brown, he's been getting it up in his last number of fights. And he looked great against Alex Oliveira. You thought Kevin Holland looked good? Man, Randy Brown made it look easy. And listen, Alex Oliveira is a bit of a wonky guy. Who knows what version shows up? Not a UFC version anymore. But for Randy Brown, the last 3 fights, Oliveira, Jared Gooden, and Chaos Williams. And I know Gooden isn't in the UFC anymore. The Chaos Williams fight, he gets, dropped late in that fight, rallies back. It was a decent showing for Randy Brown. Again, obviously, you worry about the chin of Randy Brown. For Francisco Trinaldo, I don't necessarily worry about his chin, because I think his chin and his neck are made of granite.
They are very strong. That's the wild thing about Francisco Trinaldo. A very difficult guy to stop for how old he is. And you would assume, okay, once a guy gets into his mid-40s, his durability would start to falter. But that has not been the case for Francisco Trinaldo whatsoever. And for Trinaldo, I don't know about you guys, but I feel okay admitting this. You feel weird watching some MMA fighters compete when they get to a certain age. I just, there's some fighters where they were really good, now they're just doing it for too long, you don't really enjoy it anymore. For Masa Randuba, I don't look at him like, oh, this is a guy who doesn't have other things that he can do and now he's being forced to fight. He's still quite competitive with good fighters in this division.
Trinaldo's 44, Oleinik's 45, Tom Brady's 45, and Tom Brady's having a weird year. So picture this, these guys fighting at the highest level on a Fight Night card.
And Albert
no media
Pujols just hit 701. So, maybe it's a great time to be in your mid-40s. I just don't know how Trinaldo wins this fight shy of a Hail Mary stoppage. Now, he does have great punching power. He does have really fast hands. But Randy Brown has only been hurt by some of the top-tier power punchers in this division. I know Nico Price was able to stop him, but still. Nico Price, for all of his faults, still hits very effing hard. I don't care who you are. So, and I don't think Trinaldo's going to be able to, hold his head up against the cage with his foot and get perfectly placed hammer fist against him. I just think for Randy Brown, this really is his time to finally break through and become a ranked fighter. He's had a lot of chances to fight some really good fighters in the past, but he just hasn't been able to break through and become one of those ranked, known fighters in the UFC up until this point. I think this is his opportunity, though, in a big co-main event slot.
Dan Goldstein, Randy is going to sub Grandpa T? I don't know about that.
He's gonna knock him out, if I'm being honest, though. I do think he is going to crack the chin.
I think he's one of those guys that really does fight well behind his jab and mixing his power shots really well. And you look at his reach advantage, he is a fighter that will actually utilize that reach advantage. It's just weird because he stands so tall. Not necessarily square, but he stands tall with his chin kind of tucked, which is nice.
He likes those front kicks, too.
He likes the front kicks, but he can get his legs kicked a lot. And that is a trouble in some of his fights. Something to watch out for. Clay saying, yeah, almost all of them going with Randy Brown. So I do have Randy Brown in the matchup. We'll mention the fan vote really quickly. 89% with Brown in the matchup. We'll move into the main event. Matt, I want to talk about the fan vote first. So the fan vote on the channel here, 70% of you in the chat, 328 votes. That's pretty good. 70% going with Mackenzie Dern. 80% at Fight Night Picks going with Mackenzie Dern. Start of the week, did I have Mackenzie Dern?
I think so.
No, I didn't.
Oh, I thought you did.
Xiaonan. So when it does come to this one, yeah, everybody put in or had their say in the poll, but I need to hear from you in the chat. Do you have Xiaonan? Do you have Dern, and why? Because if you're one of those people that says, well, Mackenzie Dern only has 9% takedown defense, she can't win, I mean, you can say it, but I'm going to disagree, and I'm going to have some thoughts on it. I bet a lot of people in the chat are, too, because she doesn't need those traditional takedowns like we open the show with to get her wins, right?
She does not, and that's the way I look at this fight. Mackenzie Dern could do everything wrong in this fight and still win by stoppage. Xiaonan needs to do everything right in this fight to avoid being stopped. And I know that's a weird way of looking at it, but Jan is the better striker. I just don't know how much potential she has for that TKO KO against Mackenzie Dern. Maybe she is able to accumulate enough damage as this fight goes on, and we do see Dern with, a big hematoma, her eye starts to swell up, and it does make a doctor step in, but I don't think Xiaonan has the punching power or elbows of a guy like Corey Sandhagen, so I'm gonna say TKO is probably off the table for her. Now, if that is the case, then she is going to have to really fight in an intelligent manner to go out there and get a decision in a 5-round atmosphere that we have yet to see Xiaonan at the UFC level. Now, is she the better striker than Mackenzie Dern? Of course she is. Does she have good cardio? Yes, she does. And that's why I'm not too worried about her in the championship rounds in this fight. That's why I think this fight is going to be a very fun one for as long as it lasts, because I think both these fighters have enough in their opponent's specialty to be able to just be competitive in those areas, but also they bring enough of their own flair to the game and they have their own strengths to where it should be fun wall is on the feet for Yan Xiaonan because she is better with her combinations. She is a good downhill striker, if you will. Again, though, with the pick that I have with Mackenzie Dern really comes down to the fact that I could see her losing the first 3 rounds of this fight looking terrible and still being able to go out there and get one of those crazy Hail Mary submissions. And it's not often when you look at this division and think, wow, this fighter has a very high potential for a stoppage. Because how many times do we get a fight in the strawweight division where it's like, hey, they're both really good, but it's probably going to end by split decision if we're all being honest. I don't think this is the case whatsoever. I think the winner of this is going to be dominant enough in their win to really be able to warrant maybe a rematch with a Marina Rodriguez, a title eliminator. I just don't know if this is a title eliminator type fight.
No,
itself.
and Dern alluded to that in the media day. She didn't seem to think a win over Yan Xiaonan gets her title shot. And for me, I've seen Mackenzie Dern in a 5-round atmosphere. I've yet to see Yan Xiaonan, although I think her style is conducive to a 5-round fight with the amount that she's able to box. But when I look at this one, for me personally, and you can disagree with me, and I can get this fight wrong, and I'll sleep pretty well tonight. But when I look at this matchup, Matt, for Mackenzie Dern, do I like her in round 4 and 5 to get a submission? Not as much as I like her in round 1 and round 2. And we saw how good she looked in that second round against Marina Rodriguez, how well she was able to threaten with the submissions. But once we get round 4, round 5, obviously the takedowns aren't there, but it's the desperation attempts at submissions. And a lot of people pointing to the fact that Yan Xiaonan looked really bad against Carlos Esparza. I thought Yan Xiaonan was going to blow the doors off Carlos Esparza. I didn't think Carlos Esparza was ever going to be a champion again. But I'm here today, and Carlos Esparza is the champ, so color me surprised. But when I do look at this one, Matt, and I see Clay saying, I took Dern round 3 and round 4. When I do look at it, for me, I do like Yan Xiaonan with the boxing. Do I think Yan is better than Tecia Torres? It's probably close and comparable. Could you argue about Dern's fight against Tecia Torres? You could argue either way on that one. Could you argue Yan Xiaonan's fight with Marina Rodriguez? You could argue either way about that one as well. But I like Yan Xiaonan with her striking that much more than Mackenzie Dern over 5 rounds. That I'm here confident enough to go with Yan Xiaonan to get the win, even though I'm in a big majority in the comments, a big majority in all of the polls, and when it comes down to the odds in this one, Yan Xiaonan plus 200 underdog, Mackenzie Dern minus 250 favorite in this one.
Handing off there? Oh,
Yeah,
okay. No, I agree with you. Again, both of these fighters
all the
have
breath was out of my chest. I had no words left.
Fair enough. I can't disagree with anything you're saying. I just think the gap between their striking is a lot smaller than you do. I think Mackenzie Dern can be competitive in some of the striking engagements, at least enough to where she can wrap it up and make it more of a clinch fight. Now, if it's fought in the clinch, maybe Yan Xiaonan can land a lot of elbows, be very good with her Muay Thai. But again, I think the trip takedowns of Mackenzie Dern and just her strange way of going for some of those trips and some of those sweeps are really going to affect Yan, especially on the mat. But it should be a really fun fight. Again, I don't know if this is a title eliminator itself. I think the winner of this kind of like the conference finals, if you will. I guess no, this is the second round of the playoffs because the winner would then get a title eliminator and then hopefully the winner of the next fight would then be able to go on and fight for the title because there is a bit of a weird logjam right now. I know with Joanna out of the picture at strawweight, there is one less of just the famous 3 queens, if you will, in the top of this division. So I think this is a great opportunity for one of these fighters to really get themselves in that top of the division and really be spoken about like the elite of the elite because really if you're in the top 5, you can get a title shot. Like really, if you're ranked 4 up, you can be in the title conversation at any point because a lot of the time the champ has already fought the number 1 or the number 2 ranked fighters a few times. Maybe the 3rd ranked fighters get another opportunity. You get the idea. So the winner of this is going to have a very big fight set up next for them, but should be a really fun one for as long as it lasts again.
And I mean, somebody had to do it. It's right there. You've got like a pot. Super chat from Trent. Trent, you ask these gambling questions.
It's like under 2.5 rounds for the Davis fight. It's kind of, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I guess.
But that fight does have a good chance to end inside the distance just because both guys are such high-level strikers. And with Davis, we don't really know how good he is going to look with all this time off, so maybe he's going to go in there and just try to get the knockout round 1.
Mackenzie Dern in the UFC is 7-2. She has a fight of the night, 3 performance bonuses with 9% takedown defense and plenty of submission wins. So for that commenter that decided to throw it out there, that's the counter to she's got 9% takedown defense. So, Matt, we reset the deck with question mark kicks. We get so many of you tuning in, so many super chats that we certainly appreciate. It means a lot to us. It really helps with the channel. Got some fun things up our sleeves. And of course, I'll try and add it onto there as I go down through this so you can see the thumbnail for the next one if you didn't find it on my Twitter. But Matt, we'll reset the deck. Talk a little bit about this fight. We have Randy Costa, Guido Canetti, and I'll get that picture teed up.
For Guido Canetti, he's a mid-40-year-old who's in the bantamweight division, which is never a great thing to say when you're just trying to think of things to say about a fighter. I like Randy Costa in this matchup again. He's the much younger fighter. Both these guys do suffer from the same cardio issues, so I don't think one's going to be able to pull ahead from the other one all that much as this fight goes late. I think Costa's going to be able to land some kicks, especially early on in this matchup. If he's able to land those kicks early on, then I do favor him quite a bit.
We got that gas. Grasso versus Arujau. That is the next card that you have coming up. So we put that one up there. I have Randy Costa as well. We move into the next one. Stoliarenko, Chelsea Chandler. I've got Stoliarenko, but it's not the most common pick.
And that's Stoliarenko is barely a UFC caliber fighter at this stage of her career. We all have to, if she had lost her last fight, that would have been 0-4, and you're done. 0-5, thank you. So, for Stoliarenko, even if you get a win over her, we're still probably going to have to see a little bit more from you with future opponents for us to really get on your bandwagon and think, wow, this fighter has a very high ceiling in the future. So, for right now, I do have Stoliarenko, but maybe Chandler's able to go out there, put on a really impressive performance, and change my mind in the future.
Gazo, Prince Vegeta-san, a lot of people liking that graphic. Expert analysis. I don't like this fight. Which one? Some of them are bad. I have Stoliarenko ever so slightly, and I have Max Grishin ever so slightly. Action on this card, I don't have any yet, and I don't really plan on much.
I think Grishin's the more damaging striker between these two, and that's pretty much it. Again, Linz has the takedown ability in his back pocket if he really wants to go for it. Not even in his back pocket. It's like one of those douchey chain wallets that's hanging out of his back pocket. You know what's in there. For Linz,
no money,
exactly.
Life of regret.
Yeah, a lot of monster cans in their car probably. I think Max Grishin though is the much better striker, especially in open space, and I think that's where this fight's primarily going to be contested.
And the devil laughs. Both of us with Grishin, Matt, Brendan Allen, Krzysztof, Jotko. Split on this one. I'm going with Brendan Allen, but Matt was flip-flopping all day, so he says.
Brendan Allen could go in there, land a body kick, take down Krzysztof Jotko, and choke him unconscious in the first round. I can openly admit that. But for Jotko, he can go out there and look really good for 15 minutes, and I know that's a weird thing to rely on, but he's been able to do it a lot in his UFC career.
And he doesn't get hit.
He doesn't get hit, exactly. You're never going to find Krzysztof Jotko just get flatlined with one punch. Now, he's been knocked out before. Brad Tavares knocked him out. Uriah Hall was able to knock him out, but that was an accumulation at a certain point. I just think Jotko in this matchup is good enough on the back foot to be able to use his footwork.
Krzysztof Jotko at a Zeller's parking lot in his 50s could probably dodge most street fight punches.
I'd favor him against BJ Penn.
Wow. Matt, Joaquim Silva, Jesse Ronson. If I know a guy that's been in a Zellers, Jesse Ronson's most likely crossed over 2-1 before. And they're coming back.
He was probably only in a target for about a year and a half until they got rid of all of them.
Matt, I have Joaquim Silva, but this is another one of those toss-up fights. It's pretty hard.
Joaquim Silva's like a car you buy on eBay, and you think it's going to be really good, and then you finally get it, and you're like, oh my god, there's so many mistakes. What's wrong? Why did I do this? So yeah, for Joaquim Silva, the highs are high, the lows are low, but I like him in this matchup.
All right, Matt. The next one, Oleinik, Latifi.
If you're confident either way, then you take some risks in life. I like Ilir Latifi, but not really.
You'd probably drive to a modern day Zellers if you're going with this one. I'll go with Oleinik, but it is a tough one. Davis Borshchev. I've got Davis, but a lot of people going with Borshchev in the comments.
I also have Mike Davis. This could be a really fun fight for as long as it lasts. I think it will be more of a striking battle than anything. I think maybe Davis could get clipped on the feet. Then we start to see the wrestling aspect of his game a little bit more. I still like Mike Davis for all those reasons, just because, again, if he does have anything happen to him on the feet, he does have a more sound plan B than Slava Borshchev, but Borshchev's that dangerous on the feet that you can never really count him out of a striking style MMA fight.
Just my 2 cents showing up late. Labifi by TKO. John Castaneda taking on Willie Cat. Daniel Santos. Don't love the weight miss. Had confidence in Castaneda. The confidence is, it's gone like Zellers was a few years ago, but now it's back. I do have Castaneda here.
I also have Castaneda. Should be a really fun fight for as long as it lasts, similar to the last one. I just don't know how Daniel Santos is going to be able to have a lot of sustained offense in this matchup. Maybe he can go out there and get a finish really early. I just think he is going to struggle as this fight progresses, and that's why I have Castaneda.
Castaneda, Zellers.
But old Willie Cat.
They had the gray for $32 as they were going out of business.
Zellers was weird because, most of the stuff wasn't overpriced, but all of the tech was. They had it behind those, clear unlock things, and it'd be like a Walkman for $4,000.
Here's a cathode ray television from 1985. How much would you like to pay for it? $3,000?
Yeah. And on half days that I had on Wednesdays, because that's the thing up here, I'd go there with my great-grandmother and grandmother. There's a little bit behind the mythos of Fight Night picks.
I went to that mall today. Matt, Sadiq Youssef taking on Don Shanis. I've got Sadiq Youssef.
I've got Sadiq Youssef, the guy who I thought had a really good chance of beating Giga Chikadze.
Americans have no clue about Zellers. They don't know what's up. Matt, Houney Barcelos taking on Trevin Jones. I got Barcelos. But again, if Jones shows up, you're gonna like what you see.
And I know you'll agree with this. I just hope we get the better version of both these guys and we get a good fight in this one, because I do think there's a world where this could contend for a fight of the night and for bonuses. But I think there's another one where we do get sort of the slower version of Barcelos. You get that inactive version of Trevin Jones, and it's not the greatest fight to watch, but I still have Barcelos.
Oh, I don't want to go to sleep there, Matt. Rude Boy Randy Brown taking on Massaranduba, Francisco Trinaldo. I have Randy Brown. Trinaldo's like an old piece of leather that you try and throw out in the air, and then your dog brings it right back inside. He just keeps on going and keeps on ticking. I do have Randy Brown here. I like the improvements he's made to his game, and it's not really necessarily the King's MMA version of Randy Brown. It's kind of like the rebuilt version where he went back to the East Coast, and he just has looked better. Kind of like, Beast in 25-8, Corey Anderson.
Randy Brown's probably one of the top 15 welterweights in the world, if we're all being completely honest with ourselves. Francisco Trinaldo's in his mid-40s. If I just break it down to you like that, then you'd probably pick Randy Brown every single time, no matter what.
Do you think Francisco Trinaldo thought when he was a young man getting into MMA that he'd be 18-7 in the UFC and still fighting at 44?
I think he probably did some pagan ritual back in the day, and that's why he's had such longevity with his career. For Trinaldo, again, there's not many 40-year-olds who have the type of knockout ability that he still has at this stage of his career, but I still think Randy Brown is the much better fighter.
Kalima! And then he took the heart out of
Exactly, and then they were like, you're going to be able to fight in the UFC until you're 58 years old.
I've got Xiaonan taking on Mackenzie Dern. It's not the sexiest pick. I just think that, again, we haven't seen her in a 5-round fight in the UFC. We haven't seen it in a very long time, but I do like her style in a 5-round fight compared to Mackenzie Dern's. I think if Dern wins, it's going to be not knock him down, drag him out. It's going to be drag him down, submit him out, and then she wins impressively, and she has to fight like the returning Tatiana Suarez. Is that ever going to happen?
I don't think it will. Tatiana's neck hasn't got better, I don't think.
I know. She ends up fighting, Marina Rodriguez again. I don't know. But I do like Yan Xiaonan in this matchup to get back on the horse. I thought she beat Marina Rodriguez, and I thought Tisha Torres beat Dern, but that's neither here nor there when you match up their styles. I like Yan Xiaonan. But as we said, for a lot of these fights, like Jan Allen, I can definitely see a world where Mackenzie Dern wins. Obviously, she's a really big favorite, and a lot of you have her to win.
I wouldn't say a really big favorite. She's a favorite.
Minus 250, it's big enough.
Big. She's not on the Sadiq Youssef level.
No,
that's a really big favorite. The thing about Mackenzie Dern is, if she's on the feet with Yan Xiaonan, I don't really worry about Mackenzie Dern all that much. Now, yes, she can lose rounds that way, but I don't think she's going to get stopped that way. The flip side is, if Dern's on the ground for 30 seconds with Yan Xiaonan, and I'm not exaggerating, 15 seconds with her, that is how much better she is at jiu-jitsu. I cannot stress this enough when I talk about pure jiu-jitsu credentials. We talk about Bo Nickel and how good of a pure wrestler he is. Mackenzie Dern basically has his background, but in jiu-jitsu, it's just not wrestling. That's how high level Mackenzie Dern is. She beat Gabby Garcia, who is twice as big as she is and has a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So I do like Dern just for the fact that she is such a specialist in this matchup.
Matt, if folks like this main event, the next one, Aleksei Grasso taking on Viviane Araújo. Now, I thought about it when I was doing up this, and it could change because I thought about, well, do I throw down like J Mart and put him in the corner?
I gotta say this.
Against Cubber Swanson?
Hey, all you people who complained all those years about us getting all these Anthony Smith main events, I bet you miss them now, don't you guys? I bet you miss Anthony Smith versus Devin Clark right now.
Well, you got Aleksei Grasso taking on Viviane Araújo. I think it's going to be a lot of fun because the card is one of those oddball ones.
I'll be honest, I haven't looked at it a lot yet.
It's better than the one that you actually have this weekend. So I didn't say that to start this video, but if you do look at it, I'll bring it up on Tapology and we'll talk about it really, really quickly because you have Araújo taking on Grasso. You have Cub Swanson taking on Jonathan Martinez.
That's a
Again,
fun one.
It's in 2 weeks' time. Below that is another good fight if you do consider it, especially in some of these lower weight classes because you have Askar Askarov, Brandon Royval.
That fight's been put together about 6 times, it feels like.
Serkinov, Menefield, Neil Magny, Dana Rodriguez, Piera Rodriguez. It's all the hotness against Sam Hughes, CJ Vergara, Tatsuro Taira.
Joe Anderson Brito.
Yeah.
Versus, who is... Oh, yeah, Melsik Bagdasarian. That's going to be a really fun fight.
Henry Asuncao, Maximo Malkoun, a couple of snoozers, and then Disco Todorovic, Jordan Wright. Somebody's going down. Somebody's going down in that fight. So it is a fun card. The headliner might not get all the headlines, but when you do look at it overall, it's a pretty darn good card.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it, actually.
And one more thing. There's still a lot of you tuned in right now. Toss a like. You don't have to pay anything for the like. But in the comment section down below, we do pair encounter, we answer your questions, but we don't just like film it Xiaonan style. We get down and dirty in the trenches, and then we make graphics for it. We have a lot of fun breaking them down. Throw it down in the comments section if you have something for pairing counter. There's a burning topic that you want us to cover. Not in the chat, but in the comments. It means a lot to us. We're going to go out and enjoy this card. Next weekend, no MMA. Enjoy your Thanksgiving weekend. If you're a Canadian, think about Zellers and Carlos Newton and the Allens. And yeah, we're going to have some fun getting ready for the next card.
Yeah, it should be a really fun one. Again, this is a weird time to be an MMA fan. It's not really the off-season because there's never an off-season in the UFC, but I would say you've got the start of the summer leading up to International Fight Week. That's sort of like the playoffs, if you will. Then it does have a bit of a lull, but I feel like right after this next Fight Night card, we are right back in the races again. Leading up to Christmas, there's a lot of phenomenal cards to get ready for.
Matt, some big cards coming up. Obviously, I mean, Calvin Cater's in a big main event, plus UFC 280. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say. Let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. A little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP and you're going to get 10% off your order. With that code FNP at simbody.com, you're really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.